What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to show you how to grease the wheel bearings in a Honda Pioneer 1000 using a wheel bearing grease tool. This will allow us to grease the wheel bearings without removing the axle and doing all of that stuff, removing the knuckle from the vehicle. So let's see how it goes. First step is to remove the wheel. I've already done that for your viewing convenience. There it is over there. The next step is going to be to loosen up these two bolts back here at the top of the brake caliper, one back here and one down here, and that is going to be a 12 millimeter. Once those are out, we should be able to go ahead and swing away the actual brake caliper itself. Actually, I think I took off the wrong piece. Although, while I'm in here, this is a good time for me to take a look at my brake calipers, or brake pads, I mean. So yeah, so what I did was I kind of created an extra step for myself. Those are okay, considering the crap I drive this thing through. So actually, I took off the wrong bolts. And I'm not cutting it out of here. You guys are along for the ride. So it's actually going to be these two bolts here and here. What I want to do is basically separate this caliper assembly from the actual rotor itself so that I can pull the hub right off after I undo this castle nut. So give me a second. And those of you wondering, that was a 14 millimeter. Once that is, once those two bolts come out, basically your the back part of your brake caliper will come out, and now we can basically pull the rotor and hub assembly away from the knuckle without having to take the knuckle away from the A-arms. Next up is going to be getting this cotter pin out and backing out the castle nut. Best thing I can tell you for the cotter pin is just get yourself a real thin and sharp flathead screwdriver and just kind of use it to wedge the legs of the cotter pin up and out. Most of you know how to do this, but it's okay if you don't. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, or I'm sure someone has a strategy or something like that. And actually, let me grab a pair of pliers. You just want to get the cotter pin together enough because the cotter pin has to come out the other side. So you just want to get the two legs that have been opened up to basically be able to be pushed through the end of the axle out the other side. Okay, once you have taken the cotter pin out, destroyed it in the process, as well as probably your fingers, we are ready to go ahead and remove the castle nut. So you're going to use the biggest socket known to man. In this case, for the Honda Pioneer, this is a 30 millimeter. Your mileage may vary with whatever machine you're doing this on. Use an impact if you can, and give it a little spray with WD-40, making sure not to get any WD-40 on your rotors or anything like that. Just like that, castle nut will come off. And at this point, we should be able to go ahead and pull the assembly off of, away from our knuckle. So as you can see, there's splines on the inside of the hub assembly that mate up with the axle assembly, right? You want to make sure there's a lot of a good amount of grease on that if you can. And then there should also be, on the Pioneers, there should also be an O-ring that sits on the inside of this hub assembly, I believe. That kind of helps to, let me see, keep some of the grease in. I'm not seeing it on mine. I just had all this apart recently, so it could just have been from me. But here is your wheel bearing in here. So with this tool, basically we're going to slip this tool over the axle, okay? And we're gonna basically pump this thing full of grease. And what's kind of neat about this tool is that it's got this channel that sits right inside, and there's a pinhole on this side. Okay, it looks like there's only one pinhole in here, but basically grease is gonna pump out of this. And this is a split race bearing. So there's basically when we pump grease in here, it's gonna be able to push grease into the wheel bearing and pushing out any nasty debris or moisture or anything like that. I know that it's time for me to do this bearing, so hopefully we'll get some good crud on the other side so you guys can see what we're doing here. All right, give me a second, get this thing all lined up. We'll start pumping it full of grease and see what we can see. All right, so now we've got the, I slipped the wheel bearing greaser tool over top of the axle, right? You can see it poking through here. Pushed it in about as far as it can go. Now what I am seeing is I'm getting some resistance from the axle, so I'm gonna have to kind of use two hands and basically push and hold this in, right? The bearing's staying where it needs to stay. The axle is just kind of giving me some resistance out. So I'm just gonna need to basically push the greaser tool in while I pump grease into the greaser tool and ultimately the bearing. So let's see how this is gonna go. Currently pumping. I'm gonna wait a second here and just see if I can see anything coming out the backside, which I can't. You're not gonna hurt anything if you over grease this. So keep it going if you can, if you got the grease. And what we want to see is from the back of the knuckle, if possible, if I can start to see some crud or at least some grease pushing out the back side, that means that I've basically filled the bearing, and the new grease that I'm pumping in is hopefully pushing out the old grease like a Pez dispenser. All right, I may be out of grease on this tube, but hopefully I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, let's see. Still nothing yet. All right, I'm gonna keep going here. I need to refill the grease canister and I will be back. Okay, I got the grease gun loaded back up. And also, side note, I have yet to have a grease cartridge go the right way when reloading these without exploding and getting it everywhere. So if you are one of those people that's able to do it and you care to share how you do it, if you've got some sort of trick or something like that, please leave me a comment, because you are a freak of nature. No, seriously. Spread the wealth. All right, once you've done your thing with the grease gun and it's time to, and you've filled this up as much as you can, you'll start to see some grease kind of coming out the back side of the knuckle a little bit, because the grease can't come back out the front, it'll push out the back. There's really nowhere else for it to go. You can go ahead and remove this tool. Okay. You can see the grease channel here that basically was pushing the grease into the race of the bearing. Okay. And we can take our hub assembly. Okay. Make sure that you've got some grease inside the splines. That way next time you go to take this off, you're not having to pound it off or anything like that. Everything looks nice and clean. Just kind of line it up. Clean off your threads while you're in here too. Clean off your threads for the castle nut. Since there's an open design on the castle nut, threads can get kind of nasty. So just make sure to clean those up ahead of time. Go ahead and slide your hub assembly back on. You want to kind of just push it up and just feel for where those splines will engage, and then just kind of wiggle it into place. And it'll hit a backstop point. Next, you could take your castle nut, make sure that's all cleaned up. Maybe hit it with some WD-40 or something. Go ahead and thread that sucker on. Now I'm sure there's some sort of torque value or something like that on there. You'll have to look that up. I just give it the good old redneck impact wrench hits for maybe about 4 or 5 seconds. And then you'll want to look and see to make sure that your castle nut or your cotter pin hole will basically line up. And what I mean by that is just that basically you'll be able to slip a cotter pin all the way down through the castle nut. I'm obviously not going to use a screwdriver. We're going to use a fresh cotter pin, but you get the idea. And that's it. We're going to go ahead and throw on the throw a cotter pin through, throw the brake caliper backing back on to the back side here, and actually it goes like so. And then we'll go ahead and throw the actual piston on, and make sure your brake pads are back in, make sure everything looks clean, get all the dirt and crud out of there if you can, blow it off. And then before you move any further, before you button everything up, you may want to go ahead and hit basically just everything with some brake cleaner, your rotor and everything, just to get any kind of, if you got any grease or WD-40 on the actual rotor itself or grease from your fingers, you don't want that sliding around in there. You won't be able to stop. And that's it. Okay, so I hope the video was informative. The one thing I will say about the wheel bearing greaser tool, it's super cool. Pretty cheaply made probably. It's made of aluminum, so it's pretty light. It's got to be hollow in order for the grease to come through. There's got to be a channel that runs through here. As I was pulling the my greaser gun or my grease gun off of this grease zerk, on the one that came with this piece, it broke. So I had to replace the grease zerk on here. Not a big deal. They're only a couple bucks, and I luckily had some laying around. But yeah, I hope this video helped you guys. Leave a comment if you want to see more of these videos, if they're helpful, if you want to, see me make some changes to the way that I do them. I won't change a thing, but it'll probably make you feel better. And look for more videos coming up soon. Thanks.